$52 million. That's what the federal government just committed to spend on Hoover Dam, not to expand it, not to modernize it for some future upgrade, but just to keep it doing the one job it's had since 1936, making electricity. Think about that for a second. This is one of the most famous pieces of infrastructure on the planet, a dam that helped build Las Vegas and Los Angeles, and the agency that runs it just admitted in writing that keeping the lights on now requires emergency-level spending, not someday, now. And the reason why comes down to a single piece of engineering nobody saw coming when this dam was designed. Hoover Dam makes electricity through a simple mechanical relationship. Water sits high behind 660 feet of curved concrete, drops through steel penstocks, and slams into turbines at the base with enough force to spin generators that once produced enough power for roughly 1.3 million homes. The height of that water column above the turbines determines everything. More height, more pressure, more power. Engineers call it hydraulic head. And in the 1930s, when this dam was designed, nobody building it seriously planned for a scenario where that column would ever shrink by over 100 feet. Lake Mead was supposed to stay close to full, more or less forever. It didn't. And that's where the $52 million comes in. 12 of Hoover Dam's 17 original turbines were engineered for a lake sitting between 11 and 1,200 feet of elevation. Below roughly 1,035 feet, those turbines run into a problem called cavitation, where pressure drops so low that vapor bubbles form inside the turbine housing and collapse violently against the metal blades, thousands of times a minute, chewing through steel from the inside. Run a turbine like that too long, and you're not looking at a repair bill. You're looking at replacing the whole machine. So the Bureau of Reclamation shuts those turbines down before it happens. 12 of 17 sitting idle right now, not because they're broken, but because running them would destroy them. That leaves 5 turbines still spinning, retrofitted between 2015 and 2016 at a cost of roughly $42 million specifically to survive lower water pressure than the dam was ever originally built for. And even those 5 aren't producing anywhere close to what the dam was designed for. Combined, they're operating at a fraction of Hoover Dam's original capacity, something in the neighborhood of an 80% drop from full output. It's worth pausing here to picture what this dam looked like at its peak, because the contrast is what makes the current spending so telling. For most of the 20th century, Hoover Dam wasn't just functional, it was a point of national pride, cited constantly as proof that American engineering could bend a river to its will and never look back. Tour guides used to boast about all 17 turbines running in unison, a wall of concrete quietly powering an entire region without anyone downstream giving it a second thought. That version of the dam, effortless and permanent, is the one most people still picture when they hear the name. It's not the one actually operating today. Which brings us to the new money. That $52 million investment is earmarked for a next generation of turbines engineered to keep generating power at elevations as low as 950 feet. Dramatically lower than anything currently installed at the dam. On paper, that sounds like a fix. In practice, it's an admission. You don't spend $52 million re-engineering turbines to survive water levels that low, unless you've accepted that the lake isn't coming back to where it used to sit anytime soon. And here's the part that should genuinely make you pause. The agency responsible for this project has been upfront that ordering, manufacturing, and installing new turbines at this scale isn't fast. It's a lengthy, multi-year process, start to finish. Meanwhile, the lake keeps doing what it's been doing for over 2 decades, dropping, foot by foot, while the equipment meant to handle that drop is still sitting on an engineering timeline measured in years, not months. Consider for a moment what doesn't happen if this money never gets spent at all. Without new turbines rated for lower elevations, the current 5 keep absorbing all the strain alone, aging faster under conditions they were only ever meant to handle as a stopgap. Eventually, even a stopgap runs out of runway. This $52 million isn't optional maintenance. It's the difference between the dam adapting to its new reality and the dam simply running out of working equipment before the lake gives it any relief. So why does this fix cost so much in the first place? Because you're not swapping out a part on a shelf. Your custom engineering machinery to operate reliably at water pressures that Hoover Dam's designers in the 1930s never accounted for. Machinery that has to survive decades of continuous operation inside one of the most heavily used hydroelectric facilities in the country, all while the rest of the dam keeps running around the construction. Every one of those turbines has to be built to exact specifications, tested, transported and installed without shutting down the power that's still keeping the remaining 5 turbines online. There's no shortcut version of that process, and there's no discount for urgency. Now here's where this stops being an abstract line item in a federal budget and starts costing real people money. Rural utility districts across Nevada and Arizona that depend heavily on Hoover Dam's hydropower don't just lose electricity when turbine output drops. They lose the cheapest electricity they have access to. When hydropower falls short, utilities have to buy replacement power from natural gas plants instead, often at 2 to 3 times the cost. Districts serving tens of thousands of customers spread across enormous rural service areas have already started adding surcharges to cover that gap, quiet line items showing up on monthly bills for households who've never heard the word cavitation and had no say in how the reservoir got this low. Tribal utilities drawing from the same federal hydropower allocation are doing the exact same math, watching the cost of keeping the lights on climb for reasons that have nothing to do with anything happening in their own community. That $52 million isn't just an engineering upgrade, it's damage control for a bill that's already being paid, right now, by people who live nowhere near the dam itself. And there's a deeper irony buried in all of this that's worth sitting with. Hoover Dam was originally built during the Great Depression as a symbol of what massive federal spending could accomplish. A project that came in 2 years ahead of schedule and became the largest concrete structure on Earth. Nearly a century later, the federal government is spending tens of millions of dollars again, not to build something new, but just to keep the original promise alive a little longer. The dam that once represented total control over a river now represents something closer to a very expensive holding pattern. To be fair to the engineers working on this, none of this means Hoover Dam is on the verge of some catastrophic failure. The concrete structure itself remains completely sound. This isn't a story about the dam collapsing. It's a story about the machine inside it, slowly losing the one condition its entire design depended on, and about how much it now costs, in real dollars, just to keep pace with a lake that isn't behaving the way anyone in 1935 assumed it always would. $52 million buys time. It doesn't buy certainty. The turbines it funds won't be finished overnight, and the lake isn't waiting for the paperwork to clear. Every month that passes between now and when those new turbines actually come online is another month riding on 5 aging machines doing the work 17 were built to share. If you want to see whether this investment actually gets Hoover Dam's power output back on track, or whether the lake outpaces the construction timeline, subscribe, because this fix is only just getting started, and $52 million is a lot of money to bet on a race against a falling reservoir.